Welcome to 2024. This is going to be a very interesting and scary, turbulent year. And for Fox News, that's no different. It's going to be so scary, in fact, that at the beginning of the year, a couple days ago, they asked a spirit medium to read what was in store for Donald Trump by looking at his tarot cards.
What is that?
I mean, I do recognize that I'm at Fox TV. I have a sense of loss.
A sense of loss, the card of death, is what they pulled for him. Not very good stuff. Don't worry, the rest of the tarot card reading was just as bad. But it seems like whether you believe in the spirits and the mediums and the cards or whatever, she was on point. Because a little while later, when Donald Trump was sitting in court on his appeal, he was arguing to the DC Court of Appeals appellate court, and he had his lawyer tell the judges his reason for why he should be completely immune for trying to overturn the election in 2020. And the argument that his lawyer brought up was so crazy, it literally made the judges take a step back. Look at this. January 9th, yesterday, as of this recording, Donald Trump, his lawyer, and the prosecutor who's going to be overseeing his case for stealing those documents from the White House sat in the appellate court while his lawyer said this.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
What if he weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes.
Just so you know, that's no. So basically, just as a little refresher, what's happening is Donald Trump is making the claim that he is immune to criminal prosecution when he's doing things as a president. And it is true that presidents have immunity from political prosecution. So they have immunity from prosecution when they're acting in the office of the president, if they're like in good faith trying to do what they should be doing to protect the nation, uphold the Constitution, those things as the president. What Donald Trump is saying is that when he took those documents, he gained presidential immunity to do whatever he wanted. And what his lawyer is basically saying is that he has complete immunity when he's in office and when he's out of office to do basically whatever he wants when it comes to being the president, as long as he's not impeached and removed from office. So the judge asked him, does that mean you can order SEAL Team 6 to kill your political rival who's trying to take you out of, who's trying to win the White House to get you out of office? And he said, yes, as long as you're not impeached and convicted, yes, you can be killed. So just to make sure that we're on the same page, that means Joe Biden can kill Donald Trump. Right now, under Donald Trump's idea of the law of presidential immunity, Joe Biden, when the FBI came to raid Mar-a-Lago, they could have shot him in his bed in his tighty-whities. And Joe Biden could have told them to shoot him in his bed in his tighty-whities, like raiding Mar-a-Lago like they did bin Laden's mansion, killing him. And Joe Biden would be free from prosecution because he's the president, so he has immunity from prosecution. That's it. Donald Trump wants to be a king. And as funny as it is that you can, by his definition, that right now Joe Biden can kill him, doesn't bode well for if he's allowed to take the White House, and it doesn't bode well for if another Republican is able to get the White House ever again, because other Republicans aren't too far away from his personal idea of what a president should be, and that's not too far away from an absolute dictator with almost complete rule, period. I wanted to talk about that a little bit, about Donald Trump, the person running for president, Donald Trump, the presidential candidate who could very well be the president next year. It's very possible with how bad Biden's polling numbers are. Even with all of the indictments against him, with the 91 indictments against him, with all the albatrosses around his neck, he could still cross that finish line. It's very possible, and I would like to talk to you about how, since I know it's possible, Republicans think it's possible, and the plan that they have for if they're able to actually get it done. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's actually very scary. So this is on the back of Donald Trump saying things like how he wants to terminate the Constitution. How when he becomes president, he believes that he should be able to terminate the Constitution to get done whatever he wants to get done. And what he wants to get done is persecution for his political opponents and people who talk bad about him. Donald Trump wants to be able to engage in the highest form of spite-based politics that this country has probably ever seen in the just history of the White House, in the history of presidents, just almost period. Donald Trump wants to be on a path of retribution. And this is something you've heard from a lot of Republicans since a lot of their guys have been taken down recently, been raided by the police for the crimes that they've committed or the potential crimes that they've committed, from Project Veritas getting raided by the police to get back the stolen property from like Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's daughter, to Matt Gaetz being raided and Mar-a-Lago being raided, and a lot of other conservatives being raided by the police and going to jail, and all of the indictments that have come around from like Dinesh D'Souza to all of these people. They've never thought twice about why their people are going to jail. They thought one thing originally: it's Joe Biden, the Democrats, and your fault for why they went to jail for the crimes that they committed and the possible crimes that they committed with their compadres. And so they believe that you should suffer because of it. So just straight up fascism? Yes. Their plan is to engage in, without mincing any words, their plan is to engage in fascism. Their plan is to correct all of the problems of Donald Trump's first presidency. Basically what we're doing is that there was a guy who went to a dark room with a gun and wanted to shoot people. He couldn't find that many people to shoot because it was so dark he could barely see it. Basically what we're doing, if we give him the presidency again, he's putting night vision goggles on and he's going to be a lot more successful. That's the plan. And it seems like a wild sort of thing for me to say that, but for one, his lawyer said that he could kill his political opponents and be free from persecution if he so chooses, with a Supreme Court that's filled with his picks, filled with his judges. And the only reason why he's probably not president right now is because they personally believe that they didn't want to overturn the election for him when they very much could have. Like, think about this. With all of Donald Trump's picks, they very much could have overturned the election. I mean, think about it. Clarence Thomas specifically wanted to take up his case for overturning the votes in Michigan and Pennsylvania. If that was the case, and then he got what he wanted, and Clarence Thomas, who just votes however he wants, honestly, who does not care about whether or not there's like legal precedent for how he votes. He just votes how he wants. If that was the case, then Donald Trump could have easily stolen the election. The only thing keeping him from stealing elections is literally a couple people saying no. Like 7 people who said no. 7 people who said no was the only thing keeping him from stealing the election a couple years ago. But people like Charlie Kirk have come out to say things along the lines of how he wants red states, governorships, and the next Republican president to personally prosecute Democrats, investigate Democrats, raid Democrats, people who are rhinos and people who aren't on their certain political page, to create a chilling effect to stop them from speaking out, to stop them from running, and stop them from challenging them when it comes to their political positions. That is the point of what they want to do here. And the reason why they want to do that is because they personally believe that they've been done wrong by the system. When Donald Trump got indicted over and over and over again, the reason why he was indicted is because he committed crimes. But to the Republicans, he got indicted specifically because Joe Biden wanted to enact political retribution against him and commit crimes against him and stop him from doing this, that, or the third. That's the reason for why he says that they're doing that. Right? And so he wants to terminate the Constitution, and he's gotten together with the Heritage Foundation and a bunch of other think tanks to come up with an idea called Project 2025. And Project 2025 has a bunch of things in it, from how they want to create a national ban, complete ban on abortion, how they want to and how specifically they want to concentrate power in the executive branch for the next Republican president. Okay? He vows for retribution for specifically not allowing him to steal the election and not allowing him to be president again for however long that he specifically wants, right? He said, "I am your retribution." Framing the 2024 election as a dire moment, as an us versus them struggle, the final battle, as he puts it, Trump charged forward in an uncharted direction for American politics, talking openly about leveraging the power of the presidency for political reprisals. Okay? And this is even off the back of it coming out that he literally flew fake electors, people pretending to be electors from states that do the actual voting for president. He flew fake elector ballots to DC to try to trick Congress into putting him in office when he shouldn't be in office. This is the type of shit that you see going on in that we would claim like North Korea or China or any other these, Russia, doing in these like draconian like dictatorial laws. These are literally things that Donald Trump and his like crew did to overturn the election. This is the playbook that they used to try to overturn the election. This was not a joke, and he's not funny. He's a criminal who can easily, if given the opportunity, destroy this country. Because as I'm going to show in this segment, really some of the only things keeping us from oblivion is a couple people not wanting to do the wrong thing. And I'm going to tell you this right now, if Donald Trump is able to get the presidency, he's going to be able to get a lot of those people out of office. Because over time, the Supreme Court and Congress has been slowly drip feeding the executive branch more and more power, way more power than they used to have. And this has led to a constitutional crisis where Donald Trump may be able to do almost whatever he wants. And we'll talk about some of the legal theory behind that, okay? He talks of a Pandora's box. I'd like to talk about that a little bit here. He said this: "If I don't get immunity, then crooked Joe Biden doesn't get immunity. With the border invasion and Afghanistan surrender alone, not to mention the millions of dollars that went into his pockets with the money from foreign countries, Joe Biden is ripe for indictment." The president said on his Truth Social platform on Monday, by weaponizing the DOJ against his political opponents, Joe Biden has opened a giant Pandora's box. So just so you know, the Justice Department came out to say that they are not in coordination with the White House when it comes to the indictments of Donald Trump. Trump's been indicted in New York. He's been indicted in Georgia. I think he's been indicted in Michigan. He's been indicted in several states and the DOJ itself for the crimes that he committed when he was in office. Joe Biden has nothing to do with him stealing documents from the White House. They don't just make up something wrong that he did. He committed crimes and he's being prosecuted for it. But in his mind, he can literally do no wrong. And in conservatives' mind, he can literally do no wrong. So if there's something bad happening to him, it's because a political opponent wanted to destroy him and ruin his chances of becoming president, not because he's done something wrong, because he can't do anything wrong. And this leads to them believing that they're now in the right, that they're now somehow in the back foot and have to fight back. And that's why they have to weaponize the Justice Department, police, the National Guard, the Supreme Court, the executive branch, all of these things to be able to come back at the people doing them wrong, when what that just means is that they're not allowed to commit any crimes. He wants complete immunity for whatever he can do as the president. And if he doesn't get that, then he believes that people are committing crimes against him. It's completely ridiculous, but more scary than anything else. I would like to take a look at this article from the Washington Post that details Trump's personal plans for revenge against his political opponents and how bad this could actually possibly get if he's able to get the White House again. And I'm not for like fear tactics or anything. A lot of you all know the type of segments that I make, even in like tough times, are usually pretty upbeat. But I want to make one thing clear. This is dangerous. Dangerous to the point where one bad person who's unhinged enough, driven enough, selfish enough, or evil enough, getting in the White House at this point in time with as much power that's been concentrated into the executive branch over the decades and hundreds of years that this country's been around, can do real damage to the rights and liberties of normal Americans, political opponents, and can make a de facto dictatorship if they so choose. And the only thing that's stopping them is because they just don't want to. That's horrifying, isn't it? Trump also has talked of prosecuting officials at the FBI and Justice Department as a person familiar with the matter said. He even wants to throw in jail people who are throwing other people in jail. He wants to throw the Justice Department in jail for coming out against him. In public, Trump has vowed to appoint a special prosecutor to go after President Biden and his family. Much of the planning for the second term of Trump has been unofficially outsourced to a partnership of right-wing think tanks in Washington. Dubbed Project 2025, the group is developing a plan to include draft executive orders that would deploy the military domestically under the Insurrection Act. And this is the part that's really dangerous. The law was last updated in 1871, and it authorizes the president to deploy the military for domestic law enforcement. In the final year of his presidency, some of Trump's supporters urged him to invoke the Insurrection Act to put down unrest after the murder of George Floyd in the summer of 2020, but he never did it. He publicly said that he regretted that decision to not deploy the military against civilians protesting, but he said he wouldn't hesitate to do it again if he was president again. So basically what he wants to do is to be able to send the military out to put down any protest that he deems as unworthy to exist and throw all the protesters in jail. That is a complete revocation of the First Amendment by the President of the United States that he wants to be able to do. We're not just talking about stopping people from burning buildings. They were talking about stopping any protest whatsoever that's left wing. This could stop climate protests. This could stop police brutality protests. All of these types of protests he could specifically shut down whenever he wanted because he could just invoke the Insurrection Act. Funny. One of the only presidents in modern history, one of the only presidents in history to actually invoke an insurrection, invoking the Insurrection Act to silence his political opponents and throw them in jail for protesting against him. Trump campaign spokesman Stephen Chung did not answer questions about specific actions under discussion, but he did say President Trump is focused on crushing his opponents in the primary election and then going on to beat crooked Joe Biden. Actually, just like complete sycophant language. That's crazy language from a spokesman for a real presidential candidate. We're going to crush our opponents and then destroy crooked Joe Biden. This is crazy. This isn't the language of an actual political opponent. It's the language of like a YouTuber, actually. But that type of TikTokification has dripped into the Republican zeitgeist and now has swelled up into the presidency. And Donald Trump is now that. And he's finally outsourced and found a group of people who are deranged enough, sycophantic enough, evil enough, fascist enough, and politically savvy enough to commit the crimes against the American people that he only dreamed of in his first administration. The man's trying to work. The former president has frequently threatened to take punitive steps against his perceived enemies, arguing that doing so would be justified by the current prosecutions against him. He said the criminal charges he's facing, a total of 91 across 4 states and federal indictments, were made up to damage him politically. He said specifically, this is third world stuff. Arrest your opponent, Trump said. The campaign at a campaign stop in New Hampshire in October. And that means I can do that too. So just so you know, Once again, if anybody was ever wondering where I was getting this type of information from, if I was just pulling it out of my ass that he would say something like this, here it is in his own words in New Hampshire in October, a couple months ago. I can arrest my political opponents too. Donald Trump was not arrested by Joe Biden. He was arrested by the Justice Department. He was arrested by the Fulton County DA. That he was arrested by the New York City DA. That's who he was arrested by, not Joe Biden. But it doesn't matter to him. As long as he faces consequences, that means somebody has to suffer. Someone has to bleed for it. And that's all of his political opponents. In his head, it was Joe Biden. And you'll see conservatives arguing this. They're like, well, he could have just pardoned Trump for everything. And the answer is no, he actually couldn't have. Not all of the indictments, most of the indictments he's facing are state level charges, not federal charges, and a lot of them aren't really Democrats either. Like, remember in Colorado how he was removed from the ballot in Colorado? That wasn't Democrats that removed him from the ballot. It was Republican prosecutors who argued in court that he should be removed from the ballot. It was Republicans coming after him, but no, it doesn't really matter. It's all Democrats' fault anyways. It's all his fault anyways. This goes on to talk about how Kelly, Barr, and Cobb, who are close to Trump, specifically commented on the idea of him coming after them and prosecuting them for whatever crime that he feels like they should be held responsible for, which is just not being nice to him when he was out of office. An effort under George W. Bush's administration to remove U.S. attorneys for political reasons led to high-level resignations in a criminal investigation, right? Rod J. Rosenstein, okay, one of the deputy attorneys under special counsel Robert Mueller, said a politically ordered prosecution would violate the 14th Amendment guarantee to equal protection under the law and could cause judges to dismiss the charges, but sometimes they might not. And even if they do dismiss the charges, they're still going to have to defend themselves in some way. But Trump's allies, such as Russ Vouw, his former budget director, who now leads the Center of Renewing America, are actively repudiating the modern tradition of a measure of independence for the Justice Department, arguing that such independence is not based in law or the Constitution, he said. Making prosecutorial decisions is a nonpartisan matter is essential to democracy, Rosenstein said. But this is what Vouw said, honestly. You don't need a statutory charge at all. You need a mindset change, Vouw said in an interview. You need an attorney general and a White House counsel office that don't view themselves as trying to protect the department from the president. So what he's going on to say basically is that the Justice Department isn't separate from the executive branch, and they should be able to do whatever they want. They should be able to control the Justice Department like a dog and sick them on whatever political opponent that they want. They should tell them, arrest that guy, investigate that guy, raid that guy. And why? Because I said so. And if you don't listen to him, then they can just fire you, right? And yeah, a lot of people would roll over, but the thing is, Donald Trump now has a team of people who've already worked on that. They're planning a list of names of people who are sycophantic to the Donald Trump cause to put in those places, to whether they have experience in them or not. The number one thing is whether or not you are loyal to Donald Trump and the cause, and if you will do what he says, and then you will get rewarded with high positions in his office. This is the type of stuff that people criticize like Russia for, like China for, North Korea for, right? The Constitution literally has an article on each branch separating them. They have to read the Constitution. Here's the actual thing. Yes, it is separate, but what they're talking about is that the Justice Department is still beholden to the executive branch and the office of the president. And in a way, they're right. He can hire and fire the head of the DOJ whenever he wants. He can hire and fire a lot of people inside of the DOJ. And so even though they are separate, the only thing stopping the DOJ, for stopping the White House from working with the DOJ and telling them what to do in that way, is basically it being a bad look, really, and just the norms. Like a lot of things that we take for granted here about us having such a strong democracy is actually just vibes of the president saying that they don't want to do the type of stuff that would make them look bad, right? And that's literally it. That's it. There's a lot of stuff that Donald Trump can do when he's in office, and they're planning to make sure that they can do it. Jeffrey Clark, a fellow VOW think tank member, is leading the work on the Insurrection Act under Project 2025. The Post has reported that Clark is one of 6 unnamed co-conspirators whose actions are described in Trump's indictment in the federal election interference case. Clark was also charged in Fulton County, Georgia, with violating the state's anti-racketeering law and attempting to create false statements in court. The founders of America based this all on good faith. Yeah, that's true. But what happens when somebody's in there that is not of good faith? What happens then? At the end, they say, we don't want careerists. We don't want people who are opportunists. We want conservative warriors. So this is what they're planning to do, to go to war against the American people, against their political opponents. They want to go to war against all of these people because they feel like they've been done wrong in some way. I want to talk about this a little bit, about Trump's retribution. Some of you all remember this quote, some of you all don't, but it's a very important quote for what we're going to be talking about here today. Trump said, "I am your warrior. I am your justice." He told a crowd in CPAC a little while ago in Maryland Harbor, right? And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. He's actually talking like a Sunday cartoon villain. There's actually really nothing funny about it. It's silly. There's nothing funny about it. I want to talk about this really quick because this is where we start to get into the political process of that he could actually leverage to get done what he wants to get done. Congress and the courts have granted the president with powers that in Trump's hands could fundamentally weaken the rights and freedoms most Americans believe are secure and guaranteed under law. Tribe, who's a professor of constitutional law at Harvard. So this is actually a professional. He said many statutes Congress has enacted, especially in the post-war World War II era, delegate to any sitting president such extraordinary powers to declare national emergencies when in their own unreviewable judgment the national interest or the national security warrants, and given presidential declarations of that kind the power to trigger such sweeping executive authorities that the president could comfortably indulge in authoritarian aspirations of demoting or detaining all of those who stand in their way or otherwise restricting personal liberties and the rights of private citizens and organizations without raising a legal eyebrow. So what this means, right? The reason why they're talking about the Insurrection Act, right, and the and like the War Power Act and all of these acts as well, is because Congress gave these rights to the president, which means that he can lock up whoever he wants. He can restrict the movement and assets of whoever he wants. He can lock the bank account of whoever he wants. All right? He can do all of these things. He can literally do all of these things under the War Power Acts, and it wouldn't raise a legal eyebrow. There would be nothing legally wrong with him doing any of this stuff. Morally wrong, but do you think that would stop him? No, actually. The Hitler particles are overwhelming. I've read through a lot of Project 2025. It's so much worse than they're explaining in this article. Well, we will get to it. Okay? We will get to it. That's the stuff that he wants to do. He could use the intelligence services. He can use the IRS to investigate people. He can basically shut down anybody's life and throw them in jail indefinitely for as long as he's president, for a minimum of another 4 years without any repercussions, without any prosecution, without anybody telling him no. As Elizabeth Goitein, we'll call him Goitein. Elizabeth Goitein, Senior Director at the Liberty and National Security Program at NYU's Brennan Center of Justice. She's an expert on emergency powers delegated to the president. And so we want to talk about this really quick because it starts to get, if you thought it was bad, don't worry, it actually gets even worse. One of the most worrisome statutory provisions, given Trump's threat to deploy the military in large cities, Goitein continued, is the Insurrection Act, which was intended to allow the president to deploy federal troops domestically to quell insurrections or civil unrest that overwhelm civilian authorities or enforce civil rights laws against obstruction. That law, she wrote, is written in such a broad and arcane terms that it was last amended 150 years ago. that it places few clear limits on the president's ability to deploy troops and act as a domestic police force. And what limits can be inferred are effectively unenforceable, as the Supreme Court has held that the statute does not, on its face, permit judicial review of the president's decisions to deploy. Simply, Congress has no role in approving deployments, leaving this powerful authority with no effective checks against abuse. So basically what this means is that Donald Trump, on the first day when he's in office, would enact the Insurrection Act. That would allow him to take the National Guard, the military, and send them throughout every street in America and use them as a personal police force to suppress the rights of whatever American he decides to suppress, period. Lock up the bank account, stop the bank account of, period. Put in jail any person he wants, period. Do anything he wants to that person without any judicial review, without any congressional review, and without any way for any other person to tell him no because he has enacted that provision, the Insurrection Act. She identified another 3 laws that are incredibly concerning. A provision of the Communication Acts which allows the president to shut down or take over radio communication facilities during a national emergency. It could also be interpreted to give the president control over U.S.-based internet traffic. The International Emergencies Economic Powers Act allows the president to freeze any asset, including those of Americans, or prevent any financial transaction with a designated person or entity. So this basically means that he could stop any financial transaction to the DNC, any financial transaction to any random American. He could stop you right now from getting your paycheck. I want you to know that if he enacted this act, he could tell his counsel, I want you to not get your paycheck. I want it to be illegal for him to get any money, period. And there's nothing anybody in the country can do about it. That's just how it is. That's just it. That's what he can do. All right. Without raising a single legal eyebrow, without the court or Congress being able to stop him, period. That's just how it is. As well, he could basically shut down internet access to certain websites who he personally disagrees with. So if he doesn't like the website, he can come in and say that to destroy that website, to take it down, to stop it from being accessed, no matter what. He could do it to news organizations that post negative articles about him. All of these types of people, he could do it to no matter what, and there's nothing you can do about it. The Emergency Powers Act is dangerous and sweeping and should be reconsidered. And here's the difficult thing about it, because some people believe that because here's the thing, okay? If you're wondering, like, why in the world would they give that type of power to the president unchecked? Here's the thing. They didn't, actually. They didn't. Here's the scary thing about it. The Emergency Act is dangerously sweeping and should be reconsidered. At the time it was passed, Congress retained a congressional veto, but congressional vetoes were subsequently declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Now there is literally no mechanism for congressional override except the passage of ordinary legislation, which we all know that all the Republicans in office would just simply not vote for. So there's no way for Congress to be able to stop something like that if they so choose. If the Republicans stand together and say that Donald Trump can do whatever he wants and throw in jail whoever he wants, Congress can't do anything about it. That's just how it is. Isn't that going against the First Amendment? Remember the internment camps for Japanese people? Remember that? Donald Trump could do internment camps. He could put his political opponents in internment camps. During the midterms, he can throw Democratic voters in certain places in internment camps during the election cycle, and there's just nothing nobody can do about it, because he has the Insurrection Act, he has the Communications Act, he has the Emergencies Acts, he has those acts that stop them from being able to move. They can just lock you in your home. It's very possible that he could do that. The only thing stopping a president from doing that is just like they don't want to. They don't want to. I hate Trump. So this is what we're working with right now, okay? This is what's going on right now. And I want to talk about one more thing. The Heritage Foundation, you know of them, has organized Project 2025, a coalition of 84 state and national conservative groups to pave a way for an effective, as they call, effective conservative administration based on 4 pillars: policy agenda, presidential personnel database, presidential administration academy, and the playbook of the first 180 days of the next administration. The project has already published an 887 page document, Mandate for Leadership 2025, the Conservative Promise, with the goal of arming an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives to go to work on day one to deconstruct the administrative state. Stated goal: to deconstruct the state and the apparatuses that are the checks and balances for the executive branch of the United States. That's their goal with the next president. The next president is to do that. The next Republican president's goal is going to have all these conservative groups pushing for them to enact laws that revoke the fundamental rights, that circumvent the Constitution and take away the rights fundamental to us as Americans that we pride ourselves on, that we say makes us different from any other country in the world. It's real. All right? It's real. And they've already started. They've already embarked to avenge Trump. You may have seen that they're trying to impeach Biden right now. Do they have any real reason to impeach Biden? No. Well, the reason why they want to impeach Biden right now is because he's just not Donald Trump. They think he's done something wrong. They think he's worked with Hunter Biden to be able to take money from this, that, or the third. Something. Anything. But they can't find it yet. So what are they going to do? Make their political opponents suffer. That's just it. Just make them suffer. And even if these people lose the court cases that the Trump's DOJ bring against them, remember, you're still going to have to defend yourself. If somebody just brings up a lawsuit against you and they have literally infinite money, like let me remind you, Donald Trump would have infinite money in this situation. It would be the DOJ. They would be the government that prints its own money. Infinite money to prosecute you infinitely for infinite things that you haven't done. And you have to defend yourself in court, because if you plead guilty, you go to jail. If you plead no contest, you go to jail. So you have to at least have a counsel and go to court to be able to defend yourself, even to have the cases dismissed. And they could just bring up another one against you. A non-ending cavalcade of suffering that he wants to enact on anyone he possibly wants. They've finally done it. They finally reached the end stage of what they've been working on for years. A full-on fascist takeover of the executive branch to completely revoke, to pause the Constitution and revoke the rights of any American that they want, period, without any accountability. Unless the Democrats are able to win a midterm big enough to not have to work with any Republicans and have like a 2/3 majority to overturn some powers that the president has. And outside of that, nothing anyone can do. So that's what's going on right now. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about, so you understand. And I've only scratched the surface. Remember, this is an 800-page document of how they plan to use every single lever, every obscure law, overturn every single norm, okay, that we hold dear. Let me remind you once again that I did at the beginning of the segment. A lot of the rights that we hold dear as Americans are only rights because the president has not used every single lever that they have to their disposal to take them away. He can turn an entire city into Guantanamo Bay if he so chooses. If the military comes in and listens to what he says, he can lock down a whole city. He can stop you from getting your paycheck. He can throw you in jail indefinitely without any court, revoke your rights entirely, and just throw you in a hole until he's no longer president anymore. That's just how it is. Okay? So I don't say this just to scare you or to spook you or to do anything of those lines. I say this to inform you, so you can understand what's possible if this Republican Party is able to get their way. We say a lot of things about them. We go through a lot of things that they've said, but they've been working in silence. They've been moving in silence to be able to hide their real agenda, which is to finally seize control of the executive and crush all political opposition to rule forever. That's the goal. They said it very plainly right there. So that's what's actually up for election this year and the years to come. This is the real Republican Party now, and this is what they're going to be until they implode. I don't know when or where, but this is what we're working with. Never let them say that they're not fascists. They are, and they're proud of it. I don't know if the military has enough power to kill enough revolutionaries for a revolution to be possible. Well, he is commander-in-chief, remind you. Let me remind you, the president is commander-in-chief. He has command of the entire military. He is the head of the military. He is the top military commander. All military servicemen answer to the president, period. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.